This is Join Us in France, episode 571. 571. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we take a conversational journey through the beauty, culture, and flavors of France. Today, I bring you a conversation with immigration lawyer Daniel Tostado and friends Brenna and Jeff about moving to France on a talent or freelance visa. Discover the realities, challenges, and insider tips for securing your French visa, whether as an artist, entrepreneur, or retiree. Learn from Brenna's experience as a published author and Daniel's expert advice on navigating bureaucracy, healthcare, and taxes. Taxes. This podcast is fueled by chocolatine, coffee, and the generosity of listeners like you. You book itinerary consults, take my voice map tours, join the boot camp, hop in my electric car for a day trip, or chip in on Patreon. If you want to keep me going and skip the ads, there's a link for that in the show notes. And you'll find everything at joinusinfrance.com/boutique. If you'd like to find out more about the boot camp 2026 and actually in real life join us in France, browse to joinusinfrance.com/bootcamp 2026. The dates of this bootcamp are October 3rd until October 10th, and I hope you can join me in France for 7 days of hanging out with fellow Francophiles, visits of wonderful sites around Toulouse, and optional language classes. There are 5 spots left for this unique experience as I record this. For the magazine part of the podcast, after my chat with Daniel, Brenna, and Jeff, I'll briefly answer the question, why is the Join Us in France Facebook so small? And also the catacombs, which are going to be closed until next spring. If you'd like all the links and the full episode transcript, go to my website, joinusinfrance.com/episodes, and look for this month's shows. And if you'd like a handy summary of our conversation, plus all the useful links, subscribe to the newsletter at joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. Bonjour, Daniel, Brenna, and Jeff, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Merci beaucoup.
It's wonderful to have you. We have a big topic today. You are both my friends, Brenna and Jeff, and you have been talking about moving to France for a good long time. And now you're actually taking steps. And Daniel Tostado here is a immigration lawyer in Paris. His assistant reached out and said, I'd love to be on the podcast to talk about my services because it is a subject that interests a lot of people. And I told him, okay, but why don't you help my friends in return? And I want you to know that no money is changing hands in this. This is not a sponsored episode. It's just that we have somebody who knows French immigration and somebody who needs French immigration. And so let's see what we can do. So why don't we start with you, Daniel? Tell us a little bit about your services and what you do.
That sounds great. Yes. So, hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Tostado, and I'm from San Diego, California. And 10 years ago, I moved to France myself. I had started the law school in America with the goal of finishing it here in France, and I did. And then I sat for the New York bar, got that, and then the Paris bar got that. And my whole practice is helping people move to France to get French visas, residence permits, and naturalization, and what I call is live your best French life. And it just so happens that I'm also incredibly passionate about talking about the topic of what does it mean to move here to France? What are the cultural classes between it, especially the American culture and French culture? I find it's more fun for us to live abroad because American rules don't apply to us anymore because we're not in America, and the French rules don't apply to us necessarily because we're not French, and so we're allowed to make our own rules. And that's in part why I like moving here.
Okay, make your own rules. I love it. Very good. Okay, Brenna, just introduce the two of you, please.
Well, Jeff and I are a married couple, also from California, a little further north than Daniel. We're from Orange County area. We've lived here for a long time. We're empty nesters for the second year running now. Our kiddos are in college or beyond, and we are kind of looking at the next stage of life. And it's funny, like Annie said, we've been talking about it for dreaming about it for years, probably talking your ear off, Annie. And so we decided maybe we need to finally get off our seats and start doing more than just thinking and dreaming about it. So that's why we're here.
Brenna and I have known each other since we were in our early 20s. So
Yes.
we go back a while. She's one of my oldest friends.
And years.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your project, Brenna. What are you guys trying to do? And what are the difficulties that you're facing?
Well, as Daniel, I'm sure, will elaborate when he gets a chance to talk again, that there are many different visa possibilities for Americans to pursue when seeking the opportunity to go and live in France. And I'm learning that the one I want to, or that we want to pursue, is a rather rare one. It's referred to as the passeport talent or the talent passport. And I am a published author. I've been writing books, contemporary romance and women's fiction books for about the last 12 years, published. For the last 10 years, it's been our sole source of income, our little small publishing company. And we also co write some books together in the fantasy genre. So we're seeking to go for the talent passport. Actually has several subclasses as well. And the one we're looking for is the artist's visa or the passport talent.
Right. So, Daniel, is that something that's commonly done for an author? Are there other avenues to look at?
Yeah, so I've already got a lot of reactions on this. So I'll just do a thought drop on all parties involved. So yes, since 2016, they've rolled out this category called Talent Passport, which is serving to bring in the highly skilled workers into France. That it's really favorable because it lets you sponsor your spouse, and the spouse can work in any manner on the Talent Passport family. That lets you bring in your minor children, and they can come here. And then at age 18, they can stay and join the workforce themselves. So it's really nice. And that the subcategory in question is the artist visa, which basically I'd say for Brenna's purposes that there's two major requirements. One is be able to demonstrate that you're an artist and demonstrate that you're making money off of your art. So artist is kind of in the bigger, larger sense of the word that it could be a musician, it could be someone who's actually painting or a photographer, it could include writing. I have a couple of hesitations when I recommend it to anybody right out the gates that I found them to be unnecessarily strict on this subcategory of visa versus a person who has exactly the same identical project, but they apply for the entrepreneur visa. I found that the French consulate is more inclined to give the entrepreneur visa. We had once a young woman who was the creative director for like a magazine shoot, and she had some real stars in her, listings, and they didn't give her the artist visa. And then we refiled a month and a half later on the entrepreneur visa. And they said, okay, well, madame, you're in the show business. I think you're more business than show. We'll give it to you. And then she's able to come here to France and do the same thing. So in Brenna's case, my first thought and reaction is, okay, it's great that you're an established author. And Brenna, you sent through your resume to me before we got started today. So that was really handy because I can see that you've got 56 published titles. A really good number of them, 15 are in English, and then 13 are already in French. You've got stuff in Italian and German, Dutch, So you've got a certain corpus of work around you that can base it off of. France, the two things that I would kind of keep in mind, and then I'll let you react because I tend to talk without anyone jumping in on me, is that we'd want to see a France-based project. So what is it here in France that you're going to be accomplishing in particular? And secondly, how are you going to make money off of that project?
Yeah, so my project, I also sent you my very rough draft of my project proposal, but I actually had three aspects of my project proposal. I'm not normally not a nonfiction author, but I wanted to start working with Annie on producing a series of books based on her podcasts, because we've been talking about that for years too, and how that would help maybe.
Yes, we have. And I've told you many times, I'm not an author. I wrote a cookbook, but I find it was like a pandemic cookbook. A lot of very nice listeners bought it, but I am just not a writer per se. So now that you say you'll cooperate with me, maybe I have a chance now that you're on my side.
Well, you have so much amazing content, and not all people can process this type of information, or even when they have, and they absolutely love your podcast, to be able to have a searchable reference book at their fingertips to be able to take something with them while they're on the road traveling. I think it would be a great way to extend your platform even further into print.
Right. So now the question is, would this sort of thing be considered a good project for as far as the visa is concerned? Or again, is this more of a entrepreneurial kind of freelance sort of work?
So when it comes to the artist visa, and I reviewed your 3-page business plan about what you're going to do, or I would actually call that an artist plan. For the entrepreneur visa, we have like a really solid business plan. For the artist visa, it's like a 3-pager. What am I going to be doing here in France? 3 to 6 pages, and that's essentially what this is. The one question that stood out to my mind was the finances, because they wanted to get a sense around, well, how are you going to make your money off of this? How much are you going to realistically expect to be making off of this? One way in which we did this successfully was we had a client who was well established, like you. You're a best-selling author under USA Today. I worked with a gentleman who was a best-selling author under New York Times, and he had a project that was connected back to a major French historical figure. And for that, he needed to go to the archive, he needed to do research in the libraries, and so forth. And so it was a project that needed him to be here in France, and because he is already really well established, the one of the more 4 or so major publishing houses had given him an advance that you could say, okay, well, I've got the France-based project and I've got the financing lined up, and here it is. Because when it comes to writing in today's day and age, one could be seated basically anywhere and working from a desk. And does one actually have to be in France for that? Especially if, like, let's say the book that you're working on was not necessarily connected back to France, one could be elsewhere for it. There's a lot that I like, Brenna, about your profile. The fact that you're established as an author, the fact that you've got external recognition by the USA Today being on the bestseller list, I would kind of have that be one of the various pages within the application. On your CD, you mentioned that you're on a couple different guilds and honor rolls, and that there's like certain recognition that you can demonstrate. That's good. So there'd be a part, I usually say it's 30 pages of demonstrating your artistry. So demonstrating that you're out there. And then the second section is demonstrating how you make money, like basically the royalties that you have in place off of your different books that you've got going on. The project in France, I think, is solid enough to be the basis for the Talent Passport Artist Visa, that you're going to do some kind of collaboration based off of Annie's podcast that's exploring, the lesser known, the corners of France. I think that's a great angle. I'm always putting people off to Paris or Nice. Like, my clients never going to, I don't know, Dordogne. And so it's good for them to kind of get out and see new neighborhoods, and for France to be promoting those various places. The question is then the finances. Based off your prior track record, how much can you really reassure the French authorities that you'll be able to make money off of that? So I think it's the second half of your application, which is going to be the financial projection expectations. That's going to be what's going to drive it home for them.
Okay. So my question is, what they are requiring financially is that you have a guaranteed income every month of, was it 70% of minimum wage, French minimum wage? And my question, since I do have a pension from when I taught, I used to be a French teacher for several decades. So I have a teaching pension which I receive, and that covers that requirement. Is there more I need to show as far as what am I making off of my books on top of that? Because like I said, the pension covers that minimum income, more than covers it. But are they looking for how much do I make on top of that with my books currently and in the future? Obviously, with future projects, I'll be making, different amounts. So,
They want you to be primarily an artist. That's actually one of the, I don't want to call it a dangerous part of it. We have sometimes the clients that come to us say, oh, I've got, 200,000 that I'm getting from whatever, rents or capital gains or what have you per year. And I want to be an artist, but I'm on, more of a minimum, still on the earning side, like still trying to grow in my earnings. And it almost sabotages the visa category, because they want this to be for artists that are making 51% of their earnings are coming from the art. It's for people that are living primarily as an artist. So it's great that you've got a teaching pension. And one of the ironies I was saying a couple minutes before about the entrepreneur visa is that in the entrepreneur application, we freely mention that, oh, yeah, I've got money coming from the US side. I've got a US pension. Therefore, I don't need to get up to French minimum wage, which is 22,000 euros for the entrepreneur visa, because I'm already covered for the first, 17,000 of that. So I'm less of a risk factor. I always think about it this way that it's like there's two buoys on the water and you're trying to sail your boat through it. And buoy number one is don't take a job that belongs to a French person. And buoy number two is don't become dependent on the system. And if you can sail your boat between those two buoys, France is happy to have you, whether it's for the visitor visa, because you're going to be not active on the French labor market and you have your own health insurance, whether it's you're an entrepreneur and you're creating your own job and it can earn you more than French minimum wage, or it's an artist. And so you're coming in to do your art and you can make a living off of your art. So in this case, I think it's helpful that you've got a teaching pension, but I would want to have more of a focus on your royalties. Are you comfortable talking about that, Brenna? How much on a monthly basis do you get in royalties?
He's the business end of this, so
Yeah, it varies a lot from month to month, but right now between 4,000 to 6,000 US a month.
That's lovely. That's great. You'll be able to continue relying on that after you're here in France, and you'll say, "And this is artistry, by the way, I'm a writer."
Yeah, because sorry to interrupt, but the income they're looking at is not just the income from that one book that has to do with France, but all their income. Yeah.
it's the body of work, right.
Yeah, and the most classic definition of an artist in my mind is a painter. And so painter usually makes a tableau, they sell it for, 800 euros, and then there's no more royalties to be going with it. So then the act of being a painter is you make an art and it's sold once, and then you kind of compile all the number of pieces of art that you sold in that year, and you say, okay, look, well, I can make a living as an artist because I sold enough. And that's where books and films are different from, the painter style of artistry, because you make the product once in 1994, and then you continue to benefit from it as the years go on. What I do want to do is just quickly switch over to what is the technical definition in French of what they're asking for the talent passport as an artist, because I like the wording on it. And I think this helps us in this situation. So, vous pouvez, and so I'll say in French, then I'll say in English for the audience. I'm used to having a bilingual lifestyle. Vous pouvez obtenir le statut de talent professionnel artiste et culturel si vous êtes artiste interprète ou auteur d'œuvres littéraires ou artistiques. Et si vous remplissez les conditions suivantes concerning your financials, that 51% of your money comes from your art, and that's above 1,200 euros per month. So that first part, the reason why I read that is because it says you can go for the talent passport artist if you are an artist or interpreter, or if you're the author of literary works. So it's right. You existing is right there in the title. Like they know that your type exists. You're an author of literary works. Bingo. Yes, you, Brenna. So that's why I believe in this case, why I think all things equal, you've got more than a 50% chance of getting it because they have you in mind for it. Your royalties are much more than I thought they were going to be. And I'm really happy to hear that number. And you've got a space project. So all things equal, I believe in your case file. And I think this could work.
Yeah, people love the romance genre. It's, like the people who love that genre and they read a lot of it. And so that's wonderful.
Top selling genre in almost every language, actually.
Yeah, yeah, almost every language, that's what sells the best. So, another question I have is, okay, so you think she has more than a 50% chance of getting the talent visa, which is wonderful, superb, but that means there's a 50% chance that she might not. And so that's a big chance. Could she then say, okay, I've been denied on this line, but I can apply again as a entrepreneur, kind of freelance type of visa?
Yeah, honestly, if you would, that's what I'd have you do first and foremost is shoot for the artist visa. And then what I'm constructing in my mind is a plan A, B, and C. So plan A can be a talent passport artist. Plan B could be the entrepreneur visa. And then plan C could be the long stay visitor visa. With the long stay visitor, it would be less interesting for you because it wouldn't let you have French contracts and French publishing or what have you. It would let you be here and sit in France, but then you'd be, effectively making money on the US side. What we generally say in the industry is that there's like a two-strike system. So you can file once, fail, turn around, refile, and it's not really a problem. But you probably wouldn't want to have two failed visa applications because then maybe the French authorities would start looking askew at any further, application. I had one of my friends file for the talent passport artist visa this past summer, and I wasn't sure if he was going to get it because he was still on the growing curve of finances when it comes to selling his artwork. And so we worked out a plan A, B, and C, and we filed for it. And this summer he got the artist visa. So It did work out. I think, Annie, I was saying 50% try to be more conservative and not oversell things because in this industry, you have to be very careful. It's very easy to oversell and say, and I guarantee it. And take on my word as a lawyer, because I don't think everyone trusts lawyers in any case. I'm just trying to be honest that it could very well, it's a very subjective category and it's hard to get. And so I think you've got a really good shot at it. That's my read of the room.
Okay, so perhaps you could explain to us what the repercussions of each of these visas. So if she gets a talent visa, does she automatically get a 10-year carte de séjour, or do you still have to renew your carte de séjour every year?
Great question. It's just complicated. So I'm sorry, and I don't have a simpler way of explaining it. When you file at the French consulate, and you, Brenna, and Jeff, you're down in Southern California, so you'd file in the location in LA, and it's no longer with the consulate. Since 2018, they now use a third-party service provider that, as of April this year, is now called TLS. So you would go to the TLS office and file there. They'd send up all your documentation, your passport, your photos, your case file off to the French consulate in DC, who centralizes all the decisions, and then they mail you back your passport with your visa sticker inside. And it's either going to be a 3-month sticker or a 12-month sticker. But let's assume that you got it and it's the artist status. So if it's a 12-month artist status, you're good. You come over here to France, you do what's called validation of the visa with OFI, the French Office of Integration and Immigration, and then you're good for that first year with that visa sticker. It's a VLSTS, a Visa de Long Séjour Valent Titre de Séjour. A long stay visa has the validity of a residency permit card. And then at the end of that year, and the 2 to 4 months preceding its expiration, you file online for a renewal, and then you're off to the races on a multi-year card. And it can either be, 4 years. Sometimes for artists, for international renown, they deliver 2 years for a weird reason for the very first status. But the talent passport's meant to be a 4-year status. And then what usually happens is it might be 1 year and then 4 years upon renewal. And then after 5 years being here, you can get a 10-year card. So that's what that route looks like. Or they can do it weirdly where they give you a 3-month visa sticker, just a VLS, Visa de Long Séjour, so that you get here to France, you find the lease agreement, and you immediately file online for a multi-year card. I like that less because it's a bit of a scramble. You're getting here, it takes like a month to get a lease, to find the right lease in the right city in the right neighborhood. And then nothing in France moves quickly because it's France, right? And there's bureaucracy. And if there wasn't bureaucracy, I wouldn't have a job. So here we are. So depends on where you're moving to. Paris is the least worst prefecture, and there's 95 prefectures. If you're moving to the southern part of France, they move slower, and they're not going to be accomplishing anything within 2 months' time. And so then it becomes this uncomfortable period of time where you filed, and Jeff is waiting for you to contribute a phone number so that Jeff can then file online, and then it's going to take longer than 3 months. And then one fine day they give you a phone number, and then Jeff can file. And then what they may end up doing in any case is issue you a 1-year card or a 2-year card or a 4-year card. We're a little bit at their mercy as foreigners, and that's okay because we're the piece that chose to play on their board game because it's cooler and it's in French. And then once that's set us up so that 3-month visa sticker gets followed by some kind of length residency permit card, and then you're off to the races for trying to get that 10-year card, maybe eventually aiming for citizenship.
So, okay, so the talent visa could lead to 10-year card and citizenship.
Yeah.
The long-term kind of visitor thing cannot lead to 10-year card and citizenship, right?
The visitor visa, the long stay visitor visa can lead to a 10-year card. Almost every category can lead after 5 years being here to the 10-year card, with the exception of a couple handfuls like the student visa. The French Ministry of the Interior just clarified in May that they're no longer letting most cases of retirees who've never worked in France, they're not letting them file for naturalization because they're really keen on people working here in France and having worked here in France for more than 5 years to kind of earn your stripes and really understand what France is about and have the center of your economic interests coming from France in order to then let you join the French club and become French. So they've gotten tighter under Bruno Retailleau, who is the current Ministry of the Interior. Although in French politics, you're never really sure who's the minister, who's the prime minister.
It won't last. That's for sure.
That's the next episode, Annie. So it depends on, if a person's really looking to move here to France to have, the anchoring of your financial interests here in France. In your case, Brenna, you've already got royalties coming from the US. You've got the teaching package coming from the US. It effectively would mean that you have to still earn more than all of that combined on the French side to start being a candidate for the 10-year card. So for the naturalization, I'm so sorry. But 10-year card is very doable and realistic. And for the 10-year card, they don't care where your money's coming from. It could be American, it could be French. They want you to be anchored in France to join the club.
Very good. Okay, and so now what if they decide to go with the freelancer kind of tact? What does that change? Does it change anything?
Not so much. So it would definitely be if they went for what's called the entrepreneur in the profession, entrepreneur profession libérale, that would be a 1 year status. So 1 year BLS visa sticker. And then upon its expiration, you would be filing with the local prefecture for ideally a 4 year card. Sometimes if they're mean, they give you another 1 year card because they're not sure how the business is going to do. But otherwise, it goes 1 year, 4 years, 10 years. And also at that, after being here for 5 years, you can go for naturalization. So that's another route that's doable as well.
Okay. Questions from Brenna and Jeff?
Yeah, I have several, but you want to go first?
I'm just wondering, just because I know if she does get the talent artist visa, I can get a talent spouse visa. So when do I apply for that?
That was one of my
Yeah.
questions too.
Great question. Simultaneously. So you put in your application the same day at the TOS office in Los Angeles that Brenna, you're filing for a talent passport, and which by the way, they just renamed from talent passport to talent this summer. That'll take me years to get used to saying correctly. But it's not a passport, it's a visa. So it's never correctly named in any case. So here we are.
Yes.
That you would file at the same time for the talent artist visa, and that Jeff, you would file for the talent family status, and that you both get visas. And Jeff, your steps would never be longer than Brenna's. So if Brenna gets a 4 year card, then you can ask for a 4 year card. And if it expires on June 1st, 2030, then you can get a card through June 1st, 2030, et cetera, et cetera.
The entrepreneur visa, can you just basically, also for the sake of the listeners as well, what are the different requirements for that? Because you went over the requirements for the artist, but the entrepreneurs, I believe it's different, right? The requirements for that one are slightly different, right?
Yeah. They're looking for four requirements: that you have a real and serious business idea that can earn you more than French minimum wage, which is 22,000 euros, with at least one client, not just one single client, which some are at least theoretically located here in France. And so in that case, maybe it'd be a matter of trying to line up how you can have a client or at least potential partners here in France writing support letters in that application. And it's much more about the business, and they don't really care if you're an artist or not, because in any case, you're not asking to be an artist, you're asking to be a business runner here in France. It's a lot about understanding in the business plan who's on the market, who are your competitors, and then a financial projections years 1 to 2 and 3. What's your overall cost? What's overall turnover? What is your total expected cost? What is your expected profit margin? I think both dossiers are very big case files to end up filing, but different documents going to that.
And is that the one where you have to have a certain amount of money set aside towards the business, or is that am I thinking of the profession libérale, or is this is I'm sorry, I'm getting confused now. Because there's a different one where you're gonna start a business, but I don't think it's under the talent and stuff, right?
Yeah. Annie, for your viewers' sake, I'll give you a metaphor. I was in a mattress shop once and I was testing out mattresses, and the seller said, we don't try to have you test out more than three mattresses because otherwise they're all going to start to blur together in your head. And I took that as my little lesson to say, when I do consultations, I try to reduce the number of visa categories to talk about because after a while, about five or six, then all of a sudden it feels kind of overwhelming. But we've done a good job keeping it relatively tight so far. That there's the artist status, which I think we're all clear on. What we've been talking about so far in the past couple of minutes is the entrepreneur label profession visa category. And then to the side, we were also talking a little bit less about the visitor status. So, Brenna, to your question, there's a cousin category, what I call it, for the entrepreneur visa is the talent passport corporate creation. They're very, very similar. And for that talent passport corporate creation, that one does require the 30,000 euro investment. Whereas the entrepreneur doesn't actually require any special number of money set aside. They want you to open a French bank account. And we got it for a young gentleman who does like movie trailers out of New York with 1,000 euros sitting in the French bank account. So there wasn't a certain minimum threshold for that for the entrepreneur one. The entrepreneur one is not a talent passport though. So you would not be able to sponsor Jeff on it versus a talent passport corporate creation, which does is as any talent passport lets you sponsor your spouse.
Okay, excellent. And a more general question for anyone getting any type of visa or this specific type of visa, if you have adult children who want to be able to stay either, they're home for the summer and it's going to be longer than 90 days, which is the normal amount of time that you can stay without a visa, right? Or they're in between a job or they're doing a gap year or whatever. Is there a possibility of bringing over a dependent? Because our kids are still in their early 20s, a dependent, but over 18 kid.
No, not for this. Once you become an adult, you are on your own 2 feet. And so, like, let's say somebody's in their early 20s, they usually lean towards the student visa, whether they're coming to do a master's or an undergraduate degree, or if they're coming over here because their French is not as good as it would need to be for them to live in France for the rest of their life. So they enroll in intensive French which is a 20-hour a week class. And then once you're here on the student visa, it's wonderful because you can work part-time. And then when you're working here in France, the employers start to get to know you and they fall in love with you. And then they want to hire you. Whereas if you're just some random email from Seattle or wherever, they're not gonna hire you. And so in France, it's very much if your face is here, then we'll start to appreciate you. So that's usually the route in for a person in their 20s to France.
Okay, great, thank you. We've already talked about that possibility with bringing them over as students to profound their they've taken French in high school, but it's even though their mom was a French teacher, they weren't quite as serious as maybe they should have been, or maybe it was because their mom was a French teacher, I don't know.
Maybe this is a silly question, but isn't there a thing where if you are in France for 90 days, then you go to a non-Schengen country and you come back in and it resets your clock or so? I don't know anything about this.
But you have to be out for 90 days, I think. It's 90 in, 90 out.
Oh,
You can't just go out for a day or,
Right. Otherwise, it'd be a big runaround. People just be popping over to London for 3 hours.
yes.
Hitting reset. Effectively, the way I like to frame it is it's a 90-day period, any 90-day period over a period of 180 days. So it's not necessarily purely 90 days in, 90 days out, because it could be a little bit mixed. And there's these really handy Schengen calculators where people can put in their entry and exit dates and track it basically. And then after a certain number of days, 880 days, then days start to reset. So yeah, I mean, on the tourist side, it's lovely, and I think I always recommend that too to give Paris, a couple kicking the tires test runs. See if France is a good fit as a tourist for a couple months stays, and then if you feel like it is a good fit, then you go back to America to get the visa filing done at the TLS center.
yeah, that's a very good advice for people who don't know France very well. I mean, Brenna and Jeff have been here many times and have been to lots of different areas. She knows it better than most visitors. But it's true that for most people, they should just start by coming over here for 3 months and see how they get along, and sign up for language classes and see how that goes for them as well. Because I really think if you can't learn the language, France is not good for you. Eventually, you're going to regret this.
Yeah, I think it's the make or break factor for my clients is whether or not they put in the time to invest in French. That if you're going to dinner parties and they talk in French, and then your plumber comes and your banker and your roofer person, and they're all wanting to talk in French because their English is not that good because they're not that comfortable in English, it's up to you to, because we're in a foreign country and now it's time for us to speak in French back to, as Americans, our French can never get better. Like we can always improve our French.
Yes, as a former French teacher, I'm a very big proponent on acquiring the language and not doing a year of Duolingo, string of Duolingo and consider that your French class. I mean, while that's good introduction, it's definitely not gonna get you the language acquisition that you need to be able to function in, basically in society. But you don't have to be perfectly fluent when you go over there either. I mean,
No.
as long as you've got that basis and you've got the mentality where you are going over to learn instead of I'm just gonna learn the basic phrases and then hang out with expats for the whole time. I suppose that is a plan, but it's not one that's gonna be as enriching as, being able to actually.
You will be denied that possibility, Brenna. That will not happen with you. You mentioned bank accounts. I know it used to be a huge deal getting a French bank account. Is it getting easier now, Daniel?
I've heard it's getting easier. I still think it is a huge deal. So when we are Americans and we're living abroad, and this is me putting back on my lawyer hat for a quick second, there's two things we have to keep in mind, FATCA and FBAR. So FATCA is not really on our desk, it's on the French bank's desk. And that's for them to say, you're an American citizen, so that we, the French bank, have now to be compliant with US regulations. And that's why they don't love us as clients, because we're making them do extra homework in a foreign country. And so if you walked in, Brenna, today to a French bank and said, I'd like to set up this bank account, they'll say, well, madame, you don't have a visa, so we're not really interested. And the only bank that lets you get around that is BNP Paribas. They let you set up an account before you get here as like a pre-resident, and then you can convert it into a resident bank account after you have moved. But I don't really need my clients to get a bank account before they get here in most cases, because what are you going to use it for? It's also fine to come into France, then have the visa in hand, and then hit the pavement and, pick where you're going to live and then pick that bank that's nearby. You can tell I don't work for banks because I'll tell you right now, I don't like any of the banks in France. I don't find any of them to be particularly friendly to us as clients. So you pick your neighborhood bank, whether it's Société Générale or Crédit Agricole, or I'm with Banque Populaire. I don't love them. They don't love me. And, and then after that, then you're set. Then you've got the bank account, and then you could use the bank account to pay for the lease agreement, and then you could use the proof of address and the bank account to get the cell phone number, et cetera, et cetera.
What about brokerage accounts like Wise? Because we do have one set up to
It's not
deal
a
with our.
brokerage account.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is he
No,
knows more
brokerage
than
account, you buy stocks on. I know why is just it's made to transfer money, but they also you get an IBAN number. I've read you can use them to pay for stuff in France, but some places don't like it because the IBAN is Belgian, not French.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts. France is a country, and Annie, you can chime in on this if you'd like. I'd never use the word innovative to describe France. France would love to be innovative. They invented the talent passport to bring folks like you in, and then you heard me describing all the hullabaloo about, Jeff getting the foreigner number to then file, but is it a 3-month thing or a 12-month thing? So France likes brick and mortar bank accounts with, established banks, and that whether it's one of these online banks, and the most popular one is actually Revolut. Revolut, as of last year, now has a French IBAN called a RIB. So that is a possibility. And in theory, one can use that then to complete payments. But I've just seen it that I'd recommend you get here and then you open a brick and mortar bank account. It just, things work more fluidly in that manner.
And they do need a lease as well. They need to prove address and have like water bills and phone bills and things in their name, right?
Not for the visa, thank goodness. So this one, whether talking about artist visa or entrepreneur, you don't yet have to have proof of address. For the visitor visa, you do. And for the visitor visa, they want to see 3 months of address. And so happily, the consulate let us know that they confirm accepting 3 months of Airbnb. So if in any case, you're going to show up at the Charles de Gaulle airport and you're going to go somewhere that night. So you might as well already have some kind of proof of address lined up for your own personal living. But if it's not for the visitor visa, then you don't necessarily need to have 3 months of proof of address. I don't think it takes 3 months to find a lease agreement in France. I think it takes 3 to 4 weeks. And so what I like to recommend is that folks line up 3 different 1 month long Airbnb bookings if they're going, for example, for the visitor visa. So maybe during that first month, they get that lease and then they can cancel the latter 2 bookings.
But that only matters for the visitor visa. If you're going for a different visa, you don't need this anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, you do need a place to stay.
Yeah. She can stay with you, Annie.
Yeah, I'm crashing in your guest room.
Yeah, we've talked about this. We have a guest room. She's been here a few times.
Jeff, how is your French on a scale from not so great to getting there?
I mean, I can order in a boulangerie or a cafe, but that's about it. I mean, I'm working on it now because obviously I need more French. The one question I kind of had is say eventually if because Brenda's French is very good, so our plan is after 5 years she applies for citizenship. But how good would like my French need to be for me to stay as her spouse? I mean, is it? I know they rated. Do I need to get up to like a B1 level of French to stay, or
Mhm. So, zero required level of French to get any of these visas right out the gates when you're filing from Los Angeles. So that's fine. For talent passport, they don't require having any level of language to get the multi-year card. For other categories, if you're trying to get a multi-year card like a multi-year entrepreneur, they're as of this summer putting that into place where now they're requiring like an A2 level of French. So for everyone listening, A1 is beginner beginner, A2 is advanced beginner, the B's is intermediate. So B1 is lower intermediate, B2 is advanced intermediate, and then C1 is usually as high as an American can get in French. It's near fluent, and C2 is native speaker. For getting multi-year card, they're looking for A2. Up till now, for the 10-year card, it had been show us A2, but as of 2026, it's going to switch over to B1, so lower intermediate. And for naturalization, the standard had been for years and years B1, which I never felt was that hard because B1 is not that high, all things equal. And they're shifting it now as of 2026 to become B2 level French. So they want people to speak French well in order to join the club, which for me makes sense. But I feel like it slightly discriminates against people that are coming from countries or contexts where they don't have good classes, where a person doesn't have the occasion to study French well. Because then it's a certain type of immigrant who's had a certain type of education who can manage to get up to B2 in French.
But that's for citizenship.
That's for citizenship, exactly.
We're not there yet, Jeff. You got a while.
the plan's definitely for me to take lessons once we get to France because being able to talk to people's nice.
The problem is he's a little bit insecure about language acquisition. And I think this might be the case for a lot of people because he took some years of Spanish, as most people in Southern California will when they're doing their high school requirements, but they're not very motivated. They're just doing it to get through high school. I feel like motivation is, at least from the teacher side of things, motivation is a huge factor in acquiring a language. You're in there every day trying because you know it's going to affect your quality of life daily. So that was my 2 cents for encouraging him or anyone looking to acquire a language later in life, especially.
I think you'll get there, Jeff. It's just a matter of spending time here and opening your ears and taking some classes, probably, and then you'll be good to go.
And I think it's very linear, like learning an instrument. Like the more hours you put into it, the more you'll have mastered the rarer verbs and, how French actually say things. Because how we position word after word after word in English is not going to be the same way that we do that in French.
Do you have any general advice, Daniel, for people who are looking to do this? I think your motivation has to be strong. You have to know why you want to do things. You also have to understand that there's a lot of political turmoil right now in the US, a lot of changes happening. And there are a lot of people telling me, anyway, that they would like to get out of there, but it might not be that much better in France. We have our own issues. So I don't think just escaping the politics is enough of a reason. I don't know. What do you think, Daniel?
I mean, it depends on how people define themselves, right? So, I mean, for me, I'm incredibly political. And so that I feel like my personal beliefs align with the politics of the country where I'm living, for me, that's a high priority. And we see different groups are impacted differently. So the biggest increase group that I've got this year in 2025 is transgender folks. They don't feel like they're being supported. They feel like they're being antagonized by the US government changing their gender on their passports when they're filing for renewals back to their birth gender and so forth. Academic freedom. I'm still waiting for some late night comedians to ask for some visas with me. I haven't gotten that in the inbox yet. But, it's very critical right now. We're seeing a lot of changes rapidly happening on the US side and a lot of, it's like action reaction. On the US side, I forget which year that was now, when the US Supreme Court reversed its position on Roe v. Wade and undid that. France's reaction was to concretize in the French Constitution the right to an abortion. So it was almost like France was looking at what the US is doing and saying, "Oh, by the way, we're the opposite of that."
Yeah, yeah, very true. It was like within a few weeks. That was fast for France. That was very fast.
Yeah. And that even within, you really don't want to quote me on this, but even within the Rassemblement National, so the French National Rally, which is Marine Le Pen's party, that it wasn't homogenous. It wasn't like, oh, we are all uniformly against that. It's that, modern day France is not that religious. And oftentimes it's religion that's the source of the question of abortion, and also on the question of gay rights and gay marriage, marriage equality. So yeah, France doesn't really have a gun problem. France has healthcare as a human right for documented and undocumented, and it's more affordable than on the US side. For people that are Democratic leaning, France does have a lot to offer. For people that are Republican leaning, maybe less so, but I think it's a bit of a self-selection process in terms of who makes the move over here to France.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We didn't talk about healthcare. How quickly would they be able to qualify to apply for a carte vitale?
Yeah. So the three big things, Brenna and Jeff, that we always want to keep in mind when you're moving here to France is what is the right visa for me and how does that all work? How does healthcare work and how does taxes work? So on the healthcare side, you file for it shortly after arriving. On the talent passport, you can file immediately after arriving. For other categories, including visitor, it takes 3 months of waiting and then you're allowed to file for healthcare. Roughly 2 months later, you can get a temporary social security number and you can use that to get medical reimbursements on your medical expenditures. And then roughly 8 months later, you'll get the carte vitale in the mail. And the carte vitale is a screen, ID sized card that you flash at the doctor's office and the pharmacy to get reductions on your medical expenditures. And it takes off 70% of costs of things. If the doctor costs 30 euros out of pocket, then it only costs you €9 out of pocket. That €30 amount, if you were totally uninsured, is already less than a lot of US based copays. And that what a lot of people then do is they get what's called a mutuelle, which is a top-up insurance to cover the remaining 30%. So that, that's what I'm on. I've got a mutuelle and the carte vitale, and I'm 100% covered for all my medical expenditures, so I'm paying nothing out of pocket. So that's generally speaking how healthcare works. It might be a good idea for you to have some kind of short-term travel insurance if you're coming into France. So in case you trip and fall, you have some kind of coverage here. On the visitor visa, it's a requirement, but not for entrepreneur, not for the talent passport artist. And that's how healthcare works. And then taxes, just to give a real quick plug on that, it's similar to America. We file in April of a given year for the preceding calendar year, and that the calendar year is the tax year, January through December. And so, voila, those are the major aspects to your move.
Yeah. You're ready.
And did you For the sake of the podcast, do you want to explain a little bit about just like a brief overview about the tax treaty between the US and France and how it works?
I love talking about this tax treaty. One of my accountant friends, Jonathan Adita, calls it the bee's knees for retirees. So, what it is every country, and most countries have a bilateral agreement with the United States about, okay, you work a little bit here, you work a little bit here, or you reside here, and we'll establish a bilateral treaty on that matter. So, there is a bilateral tax treaty between France and America, and they say it's the most favorable bilateral treaty for expats. If we can poo poo on Italy, for example, if you move to Italy, they're going to want to tax you on, Social Security, which is your retirement pension. On the French side, they don't do that. So the Franco-American tax treaty says, listen, US-based capital gains, which is stocks, US-based rent, US-based Social Security, those are only US taxable events. They're not going to get taxed here in France. So for retirees moving here, they might fill out a tax return and it might say zero. Versus if you're here working on a work visa, then you would file income tax here in France. So then you say revenue earned in France, X, revenue earned worldwide, Y, and then you pay your income tax here in France, and then you turn around to the US tax authorities, the IRS, and you say, hey, look, I live in France, I benefit from this tax treaty, so I'm getting some kind of tax credit on the US tax return.
Right. That's what we've been doing forever. But you still have to file every year, which is really annoying.
Yeah, because we're Americans, and Uncle Sam's coming for you.
Yes. He's a mean uncle, he is.
But if you're paying more in France than you would in the US, right? You're actually not sending.
Yeah. I'm not the tax guy, but to put on that hat for a quick second, there's two types of tax credit. There's foreign tax credit, FTC, and foreign earned income exclusion. And so you'd either use one for or both for depending on different how you split up your tax return. Yeah. So long as we're paying more here on the French side, we shouldn't be paying anything on the US side.
And typically, filing taxes in France is easier than in the US. So we don't have an accountant in France, but we have one in the US still after 20 years because there's still a lot of calculations that she can do that we don't feel comfortable doing. Whereas in France, you just like it's really simple. And the tax people in France are actually pretty friendly. If you go see them,
Yeah. I wanna give you a lot of pushback on that sentence. I feel like French tax is incredibly hard. It's like any tax system anywhere. It's like there's all kinds of exceptions in household, and my son is worth point 0.5, so we've got 2.5 people in our household, and there's all kinds of deductions. I think
yeah. But once you get that, it's like, okay.
I 100% agree with you that the French tax office, the Centre de Finances Publiques, they're very helpful there. Center Public Finance. You can go in and ask questions. But I recommend to people moving here to break up with their American accountant and get some kind of Franco-American accountant. And that's not me. I don't type taxes. So that someone understands the bilateral treaty, understands FATCA and FBAR and all these obligations that are on our desk.
Yeah, there are some. We haven't used one so far, but well, perhaps we should. Perhaps we should. All right. Well, we've been talking a very long time. I am very grateful for your time, Daniel.
Yeah.
And I will recommend people get a hold of you, Daniel Tostado, again. And there's going to be a link in the show notes. But I wonder if you'd come back after this is done to see how they did, kind of, talk about what happened and how things proceeded. And then they can tell us, if they have, was it easy or not?
Yeah, I would be very curious. It's like Shark Tank. You see the people making the pitch, and then a year later, how did the company do? It's going to be like that for Brenna's situation to say, how did it actually go? Because sometimes there's unexpected snafus in the whole process. There's things that ask for complimentary documents that you weren't expecting, or that it was going to be longer or slower in a manner that you weren't expecting. And then sometimes it clicks. One of our artist visas, he was an artist and his art goes on puzzle pieces. And it was so easy that he thought it was easy, and then when it was time for renewal, it got incredibly hard, and I was mentally ready for the hard the whole time, but they were not expecting that it's gonna get hard for year 2 because year 1 was such a cinch.
Yeah. So you don't actually file for people, they file for themselves. You just help them through the process. Like if they have questions about the paperwork or do I need to add this or that?
Yeah, I mean, for everyone, it depends on their level of autonomy, but we do have like what I would call a hand-holding service where we help put together the case file, make the appointment, fill in the visa forms. And when it's time for the renewal, if it's like, for example, certain categories are still in person at the prefecture and we go with them to the prefecture. So, and for the renewals, we do hit submit on their behalf. So that can be handy. It depends on if a person feels like they're more autonomous. Like Brenna, if you were on your own, with, 21 years experience teaching French and you feel like you've got a good sense of France, you could very well file for this on your own. If you feel like it's a big and overwhelming process and you want professional help, there's professional help out there, whether it's a lawyer like me or an immigration consultant or what have you. I'm not here to make too much of a sell, Annie. I like to undersell rather than oversell.
No, no, no. But it's good to know that you can file for people and go with them to appointments and make their appointments and all of that, because there are people that's exactly what they want. They need that, and there are people who don't need that.
Yeah, and the only thing I don't like is if they did file for on their own and then they got a refusal and then we got already one strike against us and then they come to me, then I'm like cleaning up the mess rather than having done it nice and tidy the first time around.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. Any last questions, Brenna and Jeff? Or
I think I'm good. Just one quick question about Daniel, your services. Are all of your services related to just acquiring the visa and then proceeding to get the carte de séjour for your clients, or do you do other things as far as helping them integrate into France once they get there?
Yeah, yeah. We also help people file for healthcare, the CPAM, open a bank account, exchange driver's license. There's 18 states out of 50, most are on the East Coast or Midwest, that are exchangeable. California, unfortunately, is not. And half of my clients are from California, so here we are. And so, yeah, reviewing lease agreements, we've decided that, yeah, it's part of the overall move to be helpful. And then, as I said before, we don't touch taxes. So we refer out to some of these lovely Franco-American tax experts. We don't do household hunting. That's people like Adrian Leeds, that are helping Americans find their housing in France. We're connected within that network of, we all have the same clients, all the service providers. So we all cross-refer each other.
all right. Thank you so much, Brenna, Jeff, and Daniel. And we'll talk again in about maybe a year, maybe less. We'll see how long these things proceed. Let's see how we do. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Cheers.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for giving back and supporting the show. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing that. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. That's Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes. And a special shout out this week to my new Join Us in France champions, Jennifer Bernard Merkowitz and Olivia. And thank you, Jim Woolridge, Elizabeth L. Martin, Megan Hunnert, and Bernadette Ferrandez for increasing your pledge. Would you join them too? You can do it for as little as $3 a month, but if you can afford it, I would love to have you pledge more so you can have access to more of the rewards. And to support Elise, go to patreon.com/EliseArt, ELYSART. This week on Patreon, I published posts about bus tickets in Paris, how to listen to older episodes of the podcast, a video about the Salon des Vins Terroirs et Chocolat, and I published the dates of our November Zoom calls. It's been a pretty busy Patreon week, which I love. Let me share a couple of reviews of my voice map tours. One person wrote, "What a great way to spend my first day in Paris. Now I want Annie to do all of the neighborhoods." They started with Le Marais. Thank you. I don't know. That's a lot of work. Also about my Marais voice map tour. Great tour, a fun balance of lively history, quirky details, and local knowledge. Really added depth to seeing the area. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking my voice map tours and for writing reviews. Podcast listeners get an exclusive discount when they buy these tours directly from my website. That's also the best way to support the show because it means more of what you pay comes straight to me instead of going to Apple or Google. And to make that purchase, go to joinusinfrance.com/boutique. And if you're planning a trip to France and would like some expert help, you can hire me as your itinerary consultant. If you already have a plan, I'll help you fine-tune it. And if you're just feeling overwhelmed by all the choices and not sure what sources to trust, I can design a custom plan for you, and you'll find all the details at joinusinfrance.com/boutique. I'd like to chat a little bit about why is the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook so small? And why is the podcast presence on social media so small in general? Long ago, I decided that if I volunteered to work for Facebook or Instagram or any other social media for free, they would gladly let me. And I could have done that by opening the group to anyone who saw this group and asked to join, and then spend hours each day trying to keep up with the flood of questions. If you listen to older episodes, you'll hear me talk about this. At one point, Facebook was sending more than 100 requests to join the group every hour. I was in Paris working on one of my voice map tours at the time, and I said, hell no, hell no. So I tightened the rules to join the group even more, asking people to name the host of the podcast, for example. I absolutely wanted to weed out people who just don't listen to the podcast and never will, probably. Why do I care if people know my name or not? Am I trying to build a club of adoring fans? No, I'm not. But I know if you listen to the podcast, you won't feel the need to ask the same question over and over and over again. There are groups that are dedicated to travel on Facebook that grow to hundreds of thousands very quickly, within months. I find the quality of questions and answers on these groups very low, and being someone who takes pride in only sharing things that I know is good advice, it doesn't suit my personality or inclination. There are several volunteers who moderate the Join Us group, and they also share this desire to keep it small and relevant, and not an endless churn of people asking, where is the best croissant in Paris? I do not want them either to spend hours answering silly questions. The moderators shut down any nonsense very quickly because the group is small enough. So I hope you won't hold it against me that I keep my social media presence small and tidy. It's talking to you, the podcast, that matters to me. Episodes have been listened to 5.6 million times over the years. That's where I choose to put my energy, even though it's not as flashy or visible as having a huge Facebook group. And I would love if you shared episodes you enjoyed on your own social media as well. I could use the help, but it's in your hands. Generally, people share things with outrageous titles that they want to react to. And I don't do outrageous titles, at least not so far. The catacombs in Paris just closed for major renovations and won't reopen until the spring of 2026. No specific date given, of course. So starting last Monday, that was November 3rd, the site shut down for about 6 months to tackle two big issues: humidity control and a new visitor experience, or as the museum calls it, scénographie renouvelée. I love it. If you've ever been down there, you know it's not just another museum. It's a vast network of tunnels, about 20 meters underground, where the bones of millions of Parisians have been resting for over 2 centuries. The ceilings drip with condensation, and according to the site's administrator, Isabelle Knafou, all the moisture is terrible for preserving bone material. Yeah, I bet. These tunnels date back to the 12th century, when they were limestone quarries. In the late 1700s, they decided to use them as an ossuary, a resting place for remains from overcrowded Parisian cemeteries. Today, the catacombs welcome around 600,000 visitors each year, but that steady stream of people, along with bacteria and CO2, is slowly changing the environment underground. As Knafou puts it, if we don't ask, we will end up like the Lascaux caves, closed to the public to protect them. So about 5.5 million euros will be invested in this renovation. The plan includes upgrading electrical systems, improving air circulation, and completely rethinking the layout for visitors. But don't worry, the team insists they'll keep the catacombs' raw, authentic atmosphere. The bones will stay right where they are, though the lighting and explanations might change a bit to make the experience feel more reflective and respectful. Workers will bring in materials using the same medieval shafts that once carried up the limestone and later lowered human remains. During the renovation, the team will also remove graffiti from the 19th century to today. A bit of a fun fact, early visitors used to scratch their names or poems in the walls, even though the catacombs has had a guest book as early as 1809, but whatever. If you've been, you know that the path is about 800 meters long, lined with walls of bones, femurs, tibias, and skulls. The skulls aren't structural, they're decorative, stacked to form those haunting patterns. And yes, sadly, theft used to be common as well in there. Some visitors would pocket bones as souvenirs, which is why most of the walls are now reinforced or even cemented. As Knafu says, some people just come to get scared, not realizing these are human remains, our ancestors. When the catacombs reopen in 2026, visitors will see the same powerful space, but with better preservation and maybe a deeper sense of respect for this very unusual piece of Parisian history. My thanks to podcast editors Anne and Christian Codovan, who produced the transcripts. Next week on the podcast, an episode about Van Gogh, his amazing life and work with Elise Riven, who has a great talent of making art and biographies absolutely wonderful to listen to. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2025 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.